I waited in the corner of the room, nervous with excitement. I knew that any minute now my best friend Mark would come walking into the classroom. I grinned to myself as I thought about what was about to happen. I had everything set up ready. The bucket was balanced precariously on the edge of the door. The door opened. I could tell as soon as Mark saw me that he knew what was about to happen, but it was too late to do anything about it. The bucket came tumbling down, spilling its contents on top of Mark's head. I was expecting Mark to burst out laughing as he usually did whenever I pranked him, but instead, he let out a guttural scream that pierced deep inside my body. Ah! I suddenly stopped laughing as Mark collapsed on the floor. If you think this is shocking, you will be blown away when you see what happens at the end of this video. I had always been a prankster, and Mark knew it. He was often the victim of my pranks. This was just a typical one for his birthday. It was my way of showing him that I loved him. But somehow, this had all gone wrong. Mark was lying on the floor screaming out in pain. What is it? What's the matter?
My eyes! My eyes!
What's wrong with your eyes?
They're burning!
Someone must have called for the nurse because suddenly I felt her beside me.
Here, let me take a look at him.
I moved out of the way and watched as she started bathing his face with cold water. I stood there in a daze. How could this have happened? There was only water in the bucket. How could he be in so much pain?
You will need to go to the hospital to get your face and eyes checked out.
I'm going with him. The nurse called for an ambulance. As we drove to the hospital, I sat there staring at Mark. I felt terrible. I'm so sorry, Mark. But he didn't even answer me. He just lay there, holding his hands over his eyes. Then we got to the hospital and the doctors took him away to be examined. I went and sat down in the waiting room. After about half an hour, the doctor came out to me. He looked very serious.
It was bleach in that bucket, not water. I'm afraid your friend is now blind.
What? No, it must be a mistake. I know I put water in the bucket.
It's definitely no mistake, I can assure you.
I was distraught. I can't believe it. How can it have gone so wrong? I feel awful. Can I see him?
Yes, but just for a few minutes. He needs to rest.
I followed the doctor as he led me to Mark's room. I had no idea what I was going to say to Mark. When I walked into his room, I was shocked to see him laid on the bed, bandages covering his eyes. Oh, Mark, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I have no idea how the bleach got into the bucket. I only meant to give you a soaking.
It's okay, Jason. I know it was just one of your pranks. I'm not mad at you.
But you're blind now. How can you ever forgive me?
I don't want any fuss. It is what it is. Look, I'm feeling a bit tired now. Would you mind letting me sleep?
No, of course not. I'll come to visit you again tomorrow.
Okay.
I walked out of the room and down the corridor. I was in such a daze I didn't notice Mark's parents walking towards me.
What have you done to my son?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it.
You and your stupid pranks. You're not going to get away with this. We are going to press charges.
I burst into tears and ran out of the hospital. I had never felt so bad in all of my life. Mark's parents were true to their words. They went to the police and pressed charges. I was taken to court and sentenced to 5 years in prison. When I heard the judge's words, I was distraught. I looked over at my mom and dad sitting in the gallery. Their faces looked so sad. At that moment, I felt as though my life was over. But it wasn't. My first day in the prison was awful. I was scared to death. Everyone just stared at me as if they were weighing up the new guy. Nobody smiled at me. Nobody said hello. I'm gonna hate it here. But then I met Frank. He was sitting alone at a table, so I went over to him. Mind if I join you?
If you want.
Frank was a tough guy. He had also just got into prison and had been sentenced to 5 years too. We began chatting, and it wasn't long before we realized that we actually really liked each other. And once I became friends with Frank, the other prisoners had a new respect for me. Frank didn't take any nonsense from anyone, and he protected me too. The other prisoners were scared of upsetting me because they knew that if Frank found out, they would be in big trouble. It wasn't long before I was being treated like a prince. People bowed down to me everywhere I went. I got the best bed in the prison, and at mealtimes, the servers always made sure I got extra food. You'll probably think this is weird, but I actually liked being in prison. It was a great feeling, so powerful. We were all given different chores to do, but I never did mine. I always got someone else to do them for me. Hey, you!
Yes, Jason, what is it?
It's my turn to clean the toilets today, but I don't feel like doing it, so you're gonna do it for me, aren't you?
Oh, yes. Yes, of course.
And make sure you do a good job. I don't want the guards thinking I'm slacking.
No problem. I'll make sure they shine.
I laughed to myself as I watched the prisoner run off in the direction of the toilets. As the weeks went by, my life got better and better. I spent all of my time either laying in bed, chatting with Frank, or eating. But then one day, it all changed. I was laying on my bed when a guard came into my cell.
Come with me. You have a telephone call.
I was shocked. We only had calls once a week, and I had already spoken to my parents at the weekend. Wonder who can be calling me? I picked up the telephone.
Jason?
Mom, is everything okay? It's not Dad, is it?
No, your dad's fine. I've got some fantastic news.
What?
You're going to be let out.
What? How come?
The police were suspicious about what happened with Mark. They saw how upset you were and they knew that you really loved him. They did some more investigating and they found out that Mark had been lying all along.
What? Are you serious?
Yes, the blindness, the bleach, it was all fake.
I was so confused.
You can come home. They're going to let you out straight away. We can't wait to see you.
I put the phone down and looked at the guard in shock.
Go and get your things packed up, and you're free to go.
I packed up my bag and went to find Frank. I'm being let out. Mark was lying about being blind. I didn't do anything to him.
I'm so happy for you. I'll see you in a few years when I get out.
I gave Frank a hug and said goodbye. You're probably thinking that I'd be so happy to get out, but it was actually bittersweet. I was gonna miss Frank so much. The guard opened the door and let me out onto the street outside. I was about to set off down the road when a police van pulled up. They opened the door and someone stepped out onto the pavement. It was Mark, and he was in handcuffs. Mark! He looked towards me. Why? Why did you lie?
Because I was sick and tired of you pranking me all the time, I wanted you to get a taste of your own medicine. I saw you putting the bucket of water on top of the door, so when you weren't looking, I switched the water for bleach. Then I put contacts in my eyes to protect them.
But the doctor told me you were blind.
Oh, I just faked that. I told the doctors that I couldn't see anything at all.
But how could you let your parents press charges? How could you let me go to prison?
I was happy when you went to prison. I was finally free of you.
When he said that, it felt like a knife had been plunged into my heart. I felt so sad. I thought we were best friends, but now I've made a true best friend, Frank. He's in prison, and now you'll be joining him. I'm going to make sure Frank knows all about what you've done to me. Mark looked really scared. Don't judge me. Prison can change you, and prison turned me into a prince. It was hard going back to school and having to readjust my life. I'd gotten used to being treated like a prince, and now I was a nobody again. I couldn't control the other kids like I'd been able to control the other prisoners. I couldn't get them to do things for me, and I didn't get any extra perks. So that's why I decided that I had to find a way to go back to prison. I knew that I had to come up with a plan to get myself arrested again. It didn't need to be anything too serious, just the fact that I was a former prisoner would get me put away, even for a minor offense. I waited outside school until everyone had left. Once the coast was clear, I went back into school and started vandalizing one of the classrooms. I made sure that I made plenty of noise so the caretaker would hear me. It wasn't long before I heard the sound of police sirens coming towards the school.
You're under arrest.
The police officer put the handcuffs on me.
You'll be going to prison for doing this.
I smiled to myself as the policeman led me away. I couldn't have been happier. As soon as I got in prison, I went to find Frank. I'm back!
Didn't take you long.
Where's Mark? Frank pointed to the other side of the room.
Over there. He's the new prince around here.
My face fell when I heard Frank's words. Then my shock turned to anger. No way is he taking over my position here. I'll show him. I went storming over to Mark.
Jason, what are you doing back here?
It doesn't matter what I'm doing here. What matters is that I'm back, and I'm taking back my title as the prince of the prison.
Oh, I don't think so, Jason. I'm the prince now. Everyone has forgotten about you.
We'll see. Watch your back. Over the next few days, Mark and I did whatever we could to get one over on the other one. Even though Mark had some loyal followers, he didn't have the backing of Frank. I began to get a few of the prisoners to do things for me, but it wasn't enough. I needed to rule everybody like I had before. So I decided to make a speech to the whole of the prison. I waited until everyone was in the dining hall for dinner and I stood up on a chair. Quiet, quiet. Slowly, the noise of chatter started to die down. There can only be one prince in this prison. You will all have to choose between Mark and me. You all know me. You know that I will protect you and treat you with respect if you choose me as your prince. Mark, however, doesn't know how to treat people well. He proved that with what he did to me. Only a cruel person would set their own best friend up and frame them for something they didn't do. He will only treat you with cruelty. That is the only way he knows how to get what he wants. I'm your prince. Choose me. I looked around the room to see what their reaction would be. The prisoners were silent for a few seconds, but then, one by one, they all started standing up and cheering.
Jason! 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 Jason!
It wasn't long before the whole prison had joined in the chanting. I looked at Mark and smiled. I guess they've made their choice. So now life is back to normal in the prison. I am the prince and life couldn't be better. Well, actually it could. It would be perfect if Frank and I were both out of prison. So that's why we're making plans now. We've decided that when we get out of here, in another 4 years, we're going to open up our own business together. We're going to run a bodyguard service. I'm sure you don't need to ask who's going to be the president, or rather, the prince of the company.